Alrighty, and we are officially live. This is Wayne here with Locksmith Live, and I am with the one and only, the great Dave McOmie. Welcome, sir. How
Oh,
are you
glad to
today?
be here. Glad to be here, Wayne.
Great, great. Well, we are going to go over quite a few things over your illustrious career.
All right.
You are you're so well revered in the industry. I mean, when I tell people about you, I say this is the man who quite literally wrote the books, not singular, plural, on safe opening and safe cracking. And I'm not wrong. You've written how many books now?
25. Well,
25.
including a memoir, which isn't technical. So,
Ah, okay. Gotcha. Okay. 25 books. Wow. That is amazing. Um, So we'll just start off. We went through some questions yesterday, and we'll just start off with some of the basic ones. I know you've been interviewed by people who are out of the field,
right.
but this is actually the first interview that you've had by somebody who's actually in the field, and we can actually speak the same language, and we can get a whole lot more technical than
Yeah,
any other interview has ever been.
absolutely. Yeah, I'm thrilled that you have acquired these skills because, like you said, every interview I've ever done has been with somebody outside the industry. So we can't ever really talk technical at all.
Right.
And this is great that you've learned how to do all this. For most of us old farts, Wayne, social media and all this video stuff, it is just a complete gigantic mystery that we don't understand. So I'm glad there are young guys like you figuring it all out.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, we have to now. If you want to be in business in 2023 and you're not scaling down, planning on retirement,
Right.
if you're planning on ramping up, it's not an if, it's a must. You can be the best safe technician, the best locksmith, the best plumber, best electrician, best of whatever it is you do. If you don't exist on social media, you don't exist anymore, unfortunately, and you're going to be the best person on the couch. So.
Uh, we
Not
may not like it, but that is the way it is.
Yeah, yeah. And so I'm going to put in my time. I'm going to learn everything that I can. And then when I'm out, and we'll pass the torch to some other young buck.
You bet. That's right.
All righty. So let's go down this list a little bit here. And like I said, you've probably got some of these that are repetitive before, but we've got some real interesting ones too. And I
Okay.
also know that you enjoy a little bit of philosophy and
Sure.
philanthropy. So maybe we'll jam a little bit of that in at the end here too.
You bet.
So tell us, how did you get started, and what was your early life like?
Well, I came into the industry in quite an unusual way, I think. I came in by way of a TV show. In the mid 1960s, Robert Wagner played a fictional jewel thief, Alexander Mundy, in a TV show that I was just enraptured by called It Takes a Thief. And I was just taken with this guy. He could pick any lock, crack any safe, and the ladies just fell at his feet. It was really something to watch, Alexander Mundy. And so I had my parents, I talked them into for a Christmas present, giving me, sorry if those chimes from I'm getting texted constantly, and if the chimes are interrupting, I apologize.
Can't hear a thing.
Okay, good. I should silence that on my end.
You're fine.
So my parents for Christmas one year bought me a home study locksmithing course. I believe it was from the Locksmith Institute or the Locksmithing Institute. It's been so long. It's been 55 years ago. I don't remember. And coincidentally, I'm right in the middle of doing all this. We're smoking key blanks, and doing all kind of fun stuff. I think I even got a couple of picks, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
And in the middle of all that, I'm watching It Takes the Thief and trying to improve my skills. The lady next door lost the keys to her car in her house, or they got stolen. I can't recall now.
Mm-hmm.
So a locksmith had to come out and pick the locks on her house and on her car and then make keys for him. Well, buddy, I was out there in a hot second and absolutely smitten. Like, I was just enraptured by this guy. He picked both the locks open and took the locks out to the truck to make keys for him. And if he had been a mean guy, I probably never would have ended up in the industry, but he was as nice as could be. His name was Eugene Corey. Of course, I always called him Mr. Corey. He invited me into the van, nothing weird. He just invited me into the van and showed me how the locks work. I already kind of knew. Showed me how the picks work. Showed me a way better techniques than I had learned through the home study course, and invited me down to his shop. I was just gobsmacked. So my parents started taking me down after school and on Saturdays, and one thing led to another, and before you knew it, he hired me as a young apprentice. Yeah, that's now technically that isn't Gene Corey there with CL Corey. That's CL Corey's oldest son. Gene was 4 or 5 years younger. I didn't want to mislead people who bought Safecracker the book, so I phrased it very carefully. Unfortunately, that isn't actually my mentor Gene in the photo with his dad. That's Gene's older brother.
Okay.
But that's one of my favorite photos in our industry's history. I just love that. I mean, who else do you know that had a Model T service vehicle?
A service vehicle. That is one of the first. I mean, this is one of the it's not even that who had one. It's this guy built the first service truck. Like, this is probably, and lettered on the side and the whole thing. This was one of the first service vehicles ever in existence in the history of our whole, since the beginning of this industry starting. I mean, technically, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the blacksmiths are actually our realist oldest ancestors, because they used to have to actually make the lock and the key together. And then we started, it got so big that it's now, locksmithing is its own thing.
Good point.
But
I never thought about that, but you're right. He probably was among the very first to have signage on a truck.
Yeah, and say exactly what it is. Safe and lock expert. I mean, this is groundbreaking stuff at this time. And if you're looking at this Model T, and there are people in this room, we've got about 76 people live right now watching, just so you know. This is one of the largest shows that we've had. Just think about the tooling that they had back then. Can you explain a little bit about, like, we think of drilling safes now, and it's like all this, thousands of dollars in scopes and drills and the best this and the best that. What did you have back then on when this photo was taken? What was the safe cracking equipment?
Not much. We didn't have carbide drill bits yet. We didn't have a lot of the tools that we take for granted now. Heck, for that matter, we didn't have a lot of the tools that we take for granted now. 51 or 2 years ago when I started, we didn't have scopes. We didn't have much in the way of a drill rig. Our drill rig was a long industrial screwdriver and a chain, for Pete's sake.
Yeah, exactly. And even now, even in the last, 3 years, how far have your scope collection? You said, I believe in a previous interview, that it's $100,000 roughly. It can be replaced with a $200 electronic scope now. I mean, obviously that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but you could get started for around $200 now instead of what would have been, $3,000 a couple of years ago.
I remember 30 years ago happily paying Lockmasters $1,600 for a super scope.
Right.
It was the state of the art then, for us anyway.
I know. And there was the Lockmasters had like a Hawkeye scope, a borescope, and then you hooked it up to this light box. And I mean, you can hold a candle and get more light than this light box thing. I bought out another Locksmith, and it was just something that came with it. And it was just an old relic. And I'm like, oh my goodness, now you've got LED lighting and super lithium ion batteries, and your scopes are this big and it lights up everything. It was literally like holding a candle inside the safe. You couldn't see anything.
Right.
That's crazy. So to just think about that, you had hand-powered tools. We didn't have, even motorized tools at one of those points in time, correct?
Some of the photos are hilarious, where they show a bunch of guys pushing on each other, trying to put pressure on the drill. That would be a safecracker's life I wouldn't want to have.
No.
I wouldn't be in the business if it were that difficult. Yeah, no thanks.
Right. And a lot of people are actually drawn to this trade because if you want to be a big burly safe mover and rigger and move these things, you can have that job and you can be extremely successful. I mean, there's Dan up there where we had that pen party. you
Yep.
know, and that's all he wants to do. He's got that whole market and area cornered, and
Yeah.
he's
Whew,
got the equipment to do it, you
he's
know, and
amazing. Dan is amazing.
he
He,
really
he's
is.
really, he's really probably, like Phil said, one of the few absolute full service guys all by himself. He opens safes, he moves safes, he does everything you could possibly want to do with a safe. Dan
Right.
is just amazing. Yeah.
Right, right. And that's how a lot of us get started is, you know, maybe he was originally just a mover and got some phone calls to just do some installations. And then he's like,
Right.
hey, well, you know, okay, maybe you guys move them, but that same company that called him out, because it's a tight knit community there, to
Right.
get called to even look at these ultra high security safes, the stuff that you and I work on, you know, you don't get that phone call at random in most cases.
No, that's
There's
right.
Yeah, there's a company that calls you, or you're on a special short list of people, or it's a recommendation from somebody like you or somebody else in the industry.
Right.
Now they're going to be like, hey, well, can you open that safe? And they think, well, hey, I can move it. What does it take to do that? Well, then they'll find some information. They'll run across your page. They might run across some of my videos. They might run across a book, and they'll be like, hey, this is actually a really good deal. This is actually really cool and really fun and extremely interesting and intriguing. And then all of a sudden, now your guy that used to move them, now he's starting to open them. And then
That may be Dan's story. I don't know. I've never asked him.
yeah, I went the other way. I started opening and then got requests to move and then started investing in the equipment to move. So I kind of came back
Yeah.
the other way. But you know, that's just part of it. Once you get a taste of this industry, you get bit by the bug. That's it. It's game over. You're all
Yeah.
in. Next thing you know, you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in tools.
That's it. I mean, you either get bitten in the ass by the bug or you don't. And those of us that did, I got bitten early on.
Yeah.
That's it. Game over. Nothing else. Look, what if you are bitten and you are one of the guys that gets super excited at the idea of opening a safe? What is going to compare with that? Nothing.
Nothing.
There's no job out there I would rather have. There's just nothing.
No, no. And when I was first learning this, the first time I picked a lock, I got that rush, that little dopamine or whatever it is that
Yeah.
I've been working on this for an hour and thought I was hopeless and thought it would never come undone. And then boom, all of a sudden, just like that. And I had no clue what I did. I couldn't replicate it. I sat there and picked on it for another 2 hours. It never turned again. But that's just the way it goes. And then same
Sure.
thing with safe and vault work. I got called out, and I'm a young, bold, brash guy, and I can do it all, you know. So you get a phone call up from Canon. Hey, can you open this safe? Well, boy, I'll sure try. So start researching and got my big giant Milwaukee mag drill rig from Bad Santa. And
Right.
you know, got one open, and there's nothing like the turn of that first handle. It's almost like you know, like a heroin addict gets that first hit. You just keep chasing it, and you keep wanting more and more.
Right. It's similar to a heroin addiction in that to achieve that same level of rush or the the adrenaline rush or the dopamine hit, whatever it is, it does require more and greater and greater difficulty.
Yeah.
Opening a Sentry, an experienced guy is not going to have much of a rush at all. But opening, a high security safe or a bank vault that's got some weird lockout going on, yeah, that's a thrill and a half.
Yeah, yeah. The ones I still don't mind opening those cheap little firefighter boxes because they're so fun to open because I like the customer's reaction and I know I'm going to sell a safe as soon as we do it. Ones with the wheels, so I put on a whole show. I'm like, oh, well, your safe designer built in this wonderful feature of making it a safe on the go, so the criminal can just pull out this handy dandy handle and wheel it right out the door. And I'm making fun. They're laughing a little bit, and they're like, this guy's crazy. Why is he taking this safe outside? Well, then we'll take it outside, we'll bounce it, whack it on the ground a couple times, usually just once, and next thing you know, the door is open, their jaw hits the floor, and I hand them a price list for new safes, charge them for that open, and most likely sell them a new one. So in those cases, I do kind of like the cheapo ones because I know there's a back sale on the end.
Yeah, but the rush there is coming from making the sale, not from the opening.
And looking at the customer's face when you open their safe in about 2.5 seconds flat.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Well, that's amazing. So let's get with you. What was the time and date of your first safe opening and the brand? What was it?
Well, the first safe was a Sentry. I mean, I got so lucky when I came into the business. The safes that I confronted were in increasing difficulty. I didn't start with an ISM. I started with a Sentry in the shop,
Right.
under the Mr. Corey's guidance and all. So I was super lucky. I went to work for him in the spring of 72. So this was probably late in the spring or early summer. I don't know exactly, but it was a Sentry. And we worked our way up from there to fire safes and B rates and what have you. Um, well, eventually, oh, it's kind of interesting. One time he told me, he said, David, as much as you like to argue, you should just become a lawyer. And he said, and to boot, you're not very mechanically inclined. And he was right. I wasn't as a kid. And I probably should have been a lawyer, but this is so much more fun.
Oh,
So I just live vicariously. I married a lawyer. So I get all of my legal thrills through her cases.
oh, nice. Yeah, that's perfect. What I married my better half too, and all the things that I'm terrible at, like being organized and all of that. She does that really, really well, and it's
Yeah.
the yin and the yang. I found my other half for sure.
Yeah.
Great, great stuff. Did you say what brand it was?
Sentry.
The Sentry
Yeah.
safe. Yeah, the first one I ever did was a Canon, and I'm really lucky that it even actually opened, because we know that a lot of times they tend to not give out accurate information, and I didn't have access to all of the fun tools and the websites, and the groups weren't even there. I don't even think NSO was a forum at that time. That was 10 years ago. There wasn't hardly any information. And so if I had failed at that, and I think you had mentioned this in a previous interview as well, that people don't like to fail. And there's not a lot of safe technicians out there because they get thrown in trial by fire. They don't have the knowledge. They didn't take a class. They didn't go get any schooling. And then they go out there and get their butt kicked by this thing, which is what it's designed to do. And then they never want to touch it again. And they're saying, oh, no, I don't want to deal with safes. That's too hard. I'm going to go make car keys or whatever it is.
Right. Sure.
All righty. So
I should add something.
go ahead.
That very first save that I opened with Mr. Corey, that was back before any scopes. There were no scopes then.
Okay.
We had a Champion spark plug light. It was $5 at the auto parts store. It basically a cheap little industrial otoscope is what it was. So consequently, we had to drill big holes. There was none of this 1/8 inch stuff and a pediatric arthroscope. None of that business. Big holes, line of sight, and however much light your flashlight can shine down the hole. So we would drill big holes. In this case was probably a 5/16 or a 3/8 right at the edge of the wheels there at the tailpiece. That's how we did it. But scopes didn't come into my world for another decade, almost another decade. A company called ESI in upstate New York came out with a little flashlight with a halfway decent scope that took a 5/16 hole though. So all the old farts like me who started out with an ESI, remember the big hole you had to drill to get the scope in.
Yeah, exactly. It's nothing like it is now. No, it's completely different. And your drill
and no drill rig.
Yeah, and your drill points were different. You're doing different things. Now you can be clear outside the wheel pack, and if you're off a little bit, you can still kind of look in. You can get a different angle. You've got your whole pick. You can look backward. You can do all kinds of stuff. Now if you weren't right on at the edge, you were either in the wheel, and then you really had a bad day because then things are going to get boogied up in there, and you're not going to be able to get it open. Or it's going to take a whole lot more time, or you're way out in space, and then you got to start moving holes, and now you got ovals and all kinds of stuff going on in there.
Yeah, scopes were a game changer like no other. There's been no other tool introduced to the industry that had such a radical and immediate impact as scopes. Nothing.
Scopes, carbides, and diamonds. That's the game changers here, and pressure rigs.
Yeah.
There are a lot of questions. We're up to 83 people now. That is amazing. So there are a lot of questions in the comment section. If you guys have questions, put them in there. I will go after them later. I have a pre-authorized list of things that we're going to go down because we posted a poll to get these questions from the public first. So we're going to make sure that these get answered. And then if we have time, we'll go through the other ones at the end. So just put those in the chat box for now.
Oh, we can do them all. Sure.
Yeah. And this is probably going to be a longer interview. So I'm good to hang out as long as you are. You've got a ton of fans out here. and a lot of interaction. Somebody asked, Mr. McOmie, have you ever worked with Skip Edcart?
Oh, heck yes. Yeah. Well, I could say a few things about Skip. I've been asked many times, who's the greatest safecracker of all time? And I always decline to answer that because there is no such thing as a greatest safecracker of all time. There are too many specialties, and no one is top dog at all of them. Think of things like spiking. Well, Lance Mayhew over in Idaho is this premier spiking expert in the world. There's Skip with his best buddy, Phil Shearer. Now look at Skip's aim there. It doesn't look too good. Yeah, what a pair they were. But look, if you put that gun to my head and made me pick one guy to be the all-round best safety, it would definitely be Skip. And it's for this reason. There are lots of specialties. Manipulation, key lock picking. I don't mean pin tumbler locks. I mean imported key locks from Europe that are on high security safes. Skip was either the best or basically tied for the best in both of those categories. Combination lock manipulation and high security lock, P-lock, key lock picking and decoding.
Mm-hmm.
And what facilitated Skip's ascent to the very top of the key lock world was his good buddy, Phil Shearer, who's just a mechanical dang genius. When you look at the tools that Phil has developed, oh my God, it's just stunning. But yeah, I would nominate Skip because of his dominance. And he was, look, I'm a bank vault opener, but there's no question that Skip was king of the vaults. I mean, his passion was just palpable. Yeah, I would say that Skip would deserve it, although I hesitate because he did have weaknesses. He wasn't very knowledgeable about antiques, and that used to just rub me the wrong way. And he would tweak me all the time, call him, filthy, dirty old antiques. I'm like, what are you talking about? Don't you dare call that Hall's Premier a filthy, dirty antique. We had a lot of really fun back and forth. I used to love Rush Limbaugh. Skip hated Rush Limbaugh, so we would constantly tweak each other. And by the way, Skip passed 10 years ago this month. I can hardly believe that it's been an entire decade since he passed. One of my best memories, though, was, and there are lots of these, he would take far off jobs and he would fly when he had to, but he preferred to take his van because he had all of his equipment. Look, anybody that's flown to any number of jobs, you know what that feeling is like, to get out in Timbuktu and worry, oh crap, did I leave something really important to this job at home? So Skip preferred to take his van. Well, some of these jobs were 10, 12-hour drives one way. So I'd get a call at 11 o'clock my time, which is 2 o'clock East Coast time. Skip's driving home. He's falling asleep. His head's out the window. He's trying to stay awake. So like I'm duty bound to keep this fella alive and well until he gets home. And it was just amazing. He would take off and drive the furthest darn destination you could, North Carolina, South Carolina, it didn't matter. Do the job and just turn around and come home. Most of us would stay all night in a hotel and drive home the next day, not Skip. Occasionally he would, but I got many calls. I'm sure Phil did too. Where basically our job was to keep him awake and not let him fall asleep at the wheel.
Wow.
Skip was also one of the most generous guys I've ever met in my life. And that doesn't, not just in our industry, but in my life generally. A visit to Skip meant bringing a suitcase because you were going to go home with all kinds of Skip goodies. He was just that way. And we used to have manipulation contests around his kitchen table. Now, granted, he was a far better manipulator, but I'm always game, and I beat him one time out of the dozens of attempts, one time. And I have to say that to this day, I don't think I actually beat him. I think he let me win. But that's another whole long story. He was just that kind of guy.
Yeah. No, it's such a shame. That's right about 2012 is when I got into the industry and didn't even touch safer vaults at that particular time, that first year. But it's so many people that, we just missed by just a little bit of a window there and they had passed on. And that's really one of the things that motivates me to do these interviews like I'm doing with you right now, because we need this knowledge. We need this interview. The people, the next generation needs to hear what you had to go through and what other past safe techs have gone through and how much knowledge has gone to the grave. That would just be so useful right now. I mean, there are new people coming up with new ideas, and some of that technology and some of those ideas may just not even be relevant anymore. However, a lot of them are. And that's where coming together and uniting and bringing people together and exchanging ideas has really come to fruition and really come together. And that's what your page is about. Do you want to talk about your website a little bit?
Do you mean my personal website or the forum?
NSO.
Oh, the forum. Yeah. Well, we have a tech support forum. NSO does that. I hesitate to toot NSO's horn, but it's a pretty darn good tech support forum. Anybody who works on safes, I would advise them to be a member.
I'm gonna stop you right there, Dave. You have the best forum on the internet for safe and vault information. I'll just confirm that and reaffirm that by far, hands down, the best.
Well, that's my personal website there.
I wasn't gonna go to. Well, let's see here. We can go to.
You can put the forum up there. It won't hurt anything.
Okay. I don't have it to where we're set for logged in. I didn't want to bring that page up.
Okay, no biggie. Okay.
Yeah, but this is it here, and then here's a little sample page right here. You can view a thread if we want to check out what we've got here. So you've got really great pictures. It explains what you're doing a little bit here. I'll let you take over. You can explain what's going on here.
Well, one of the disconcerting things that happened within just a couple of days of me putting that out there, that thread that you see there, I got emails from very early members to the forum saying, "Oh my gosh, your forum has leaked out into the public." I could not believe it. It was the Google bot. See, this is the one thread, the one and only thread for the forum that exists outside the forum for prospective locksmiths to look at, to see, try to decide if they want to become a member. And the Google bots had it within 24 hours.
Yeah. Well, wait till AI comes out. It's going to have it in about 24 seconds. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, speaking of AI, I should probably mention to your viewers, I don't think this is too premature, but I have a son that is a computer scientist. He's he's an elite level programmer. He's a tremendously talented young man. He's not super young. He's 38 now. But he is actually in the process, as we speak, of building an AI search engine for the forum. And our goal, if you've ever used Google, I forget what they call it. It's the Google thing that can recognize any object. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You take a picture. You take a picture and it finds it. Yes.
And he is building that exact same thing for the forum, so that instead of having to use text and search Mosler fire safe or whatever, we're simply going to be able to plug in a photo. And this AI is going to spit you back the most relevant threads on that safe without having to go through all of the, Mosler this and Diebold that. Just put the photo in and get the information back.
Yeah.
I'm super excited.
Oh, that is going to be amazing. That's going to be a game changer, because here's where technology has created a solution, but then again, it's created another problem, right? So if I go type in Yale, 05, or whatever, I type in American security, I'm going to get a bazillion posts on American security safes, locks, all the above. It's probably the most searched, it's probably in half the threads that are over there. How do I sort through that? Keypad's really not going to, filter that down. So it is good that you're going to be getting that. Otherwise, people, what they'll do is they'll get lazy and they'll just make another post and not do the research and comb through the pictures and comb through what's already been posted, and they'll wait for somebody else to do the research and post that back to them. But that's just admin stuff, man. What you do on your page, I do for social media pages all the time, and it's obnoxious, but it is what it is. Well,
the truth is, I'm lost a high percentage of the time on the technical side, not the safe technical side, but the computer technical side. Mm-hmm. I'm often flailing trying to get things to work right.
Oh, yeah. That's crazy. Well, that's great that your son's doing that. My son just went to CU Boulder, and of course, now they got Deion Sanders for the coach and everything. So that's really cool. But he's going into computer science too. He's going to try and build AI that helps pick stock trends or something like that. I don't even
Sure.
comprehend what it is. I asked him if he was interested in this. He thought it was kind of cool, but he wants to go play with computers. So that's fine too. We'll help support that as well. So it's nice to know the younger generation's getting into the tech side of things.
Well, if you've played with Chat GPT-4,
Yeah.
I mean, it is unsettling.
Oh, it's scary. And then when AI starts creating AI, that's when I guess
Right.
Skynet or whatever comes out. We're all going
Yeah.
into the matrix to become batteries or something.
That's a real worry.
It is. It
Once
is.
it becomes able to reproduce itself, via silicon, not carbon, we might be in real trouble. There's
Yeah, we'll be
huge
the
arguments in computer science about that, with some people saying, just unplug it, and other people saying, unplug it. No, what if it controls the power?
What if it controls the power? Well,
Right.
and really, I had a little bit of a chat with my son about this, and the biggest worry is, you're seeing it now. Like they can make a picture of whatever political figure, and they can make them have a speech, say things that they
Sure.
never said, do things, and it's the doubt that's actually going to crush everything, because you can't believe anything,
Right.
and when nobody can believe anything, it's utter and complete chaos, and that is the scariest factor. It's not so much the robots eating us; it's we not knowing what's real anymore.
Well, you're right. I mean, and that can lead to nihilism, because without knowing. And you're right. The deep fakes are already posing a huge problem.
Yeah, they already are. So, all right. Well, let's get back to a little bit more
Sure.
technical stuff. I promised a little bit of philosophy and whatnot in there, so we can sprinkle it in from time to time. Next question here, question 4: how many openings do you do per year, and how many did you do in your peak years?
Well, I was never turning in crazy numbers. I have friends that turn in crazy numbers. If you ever talked with Dave Richardson, the Beast, down in LA, I mean, he was doing 500 plus a year. I've
Wow.
never ever done those kinds of numbers. Part of that is because I specialize in difficult containers and bank vaults, so I'm on planes a lot, or was on planes a lot before I semi-retired. At my peak, I average, 7 or 8 a week. That's it. Now I'm only doing a couple, and I'm happy. I wouldn't
That's
really have time to do more. The NSO, I run it all by myself, and you're involved in a bunch of things, and you know as well as I do that a lot of the work is completely behind the scenes, and it's time consuming.
Yep, updates and making sure everything's working, and then you get an email, hey, I can't access the site, things are
Right,
down, you got to go
right,
troubleshooting, and you and I are not that tech savvy, compared
right.
to technical people like our kids. They can fix it in 2.5 seconds, and we'll be there for
Yeah.
2 days, and our eyes will be crossed, and we won't know what's
I
going
had to
on.
give up. I had to give up my favorite hobby
Oh,
when National went under and left me with NSO.
hmm
I had to give up my favorite hobby, which was scopes. I used to buy and sell scopes, and I absolutely loved it. It was
hmm
like Christmas when I would get a big box from a medical supplier.
yeah,
And man, a lot of those companies want to get rid of old inventory, stuff that's just sitting on the shelf that they haven't gotten rid of. And I
wow,
would get boxes and boxes of scopes, and it'd be like Christmas. I'd open it and look through every single one of them. And I would have my kit there, my various kits with me. And if one of the ones I got from the medical supply house was in better shape than the one in my varsity case, I'd replace it. And then I would
hmm
go to my junior varsity case and see if it's better and what have you.
wow.
A good safe guy has backups to his backups to his backups. You never want to get caught with your pants down not having a scope.
No, no, 2 is 1 and 1 is none, and probably for us 4 is 1 because
Yeah, well put.
yeah, yeah. So, okay, great. So you did state that you had a son, and was he ever in the industry at all?
No,
No, just went
no,
to
I
be
have a
with him.
younger son that
Mhm.
works with me a lot now, but that's just temporary. He'll be off to school here shortly, so that'll come to an end.
Oh, okay. So have you ever had like a real apprentice? Have you ever had somebody like, hey, I want to carry your tools, I want to work with you for extended periods of time to really be an apprentice, a proper one?
I never took one, and the reason is the same old one. Is I don't know, as ruthless as this sounds, I didn't want to train my future competition, so I just didn't do that. I never took an apprentice on.
Okay. I mean, and really, you've taught so much now. When did you start doing pen parties?
in 1988, and they weren't even my idea. I was sitting at a table. I don't hardly ever get dressed up. I don't like getting dressed up, but I forget who it was that talked me into coming to the Philadelphia convention back in '88. And I was sitting next to Ed Dornish, who had Keystone Safe at the time. And
Mm-hmm.
Ed said, "Hey, what would you charge to come open? I've got 80 locked safes in my warehouse. What would you charge me to come open them all for me?"
Mm-hmm.
So I gave him a number, and sitting next to me on the other side was Rex Parmerly, who was an instructor, an industry instructor for a long, long time. And Rex was also a pretty savvy, creative guy. And he said, "Wait a sec, I have an idea. Why don't we turn this into a class?" And Ed was game. I was game. So Rex made a bunch of phone calls, and the very first pen party happened at Keystone Safe at Dornish's place in Philadelphia in the spring of night or spring or summer, I can't remember now, of
Mm-hmm.
1988.
Right.
The Ledger covered it, and it was hilarious. Uh, because I was a writer for their competition, the National Locksmith, they never mentioned my name covering the very first pen party. Pretty funny.
Jeez. My goodness. Yeah, things were kept a little tighter back then.
Oh, you're not kidding. I could never mention the Ledger.
No.
And we had strict rules, and it used to just burn me. There were certain products that you were not allowed to talk about or to say anything negative about. And it's because they bought lots of advertising in
Sponsorship.
the magazine. That did not sit well with me, but it was just a fact of life.
Yeah, and that is one of the things that I do feel privileged about now is you don't actually need a organization to channel your media through now. If social media has given us anything, it's created that platform so that I actually, because I do things with sponsored companies quite often. We try and get this show sponsored from time to time, and I get to choose the companies that I like their product. And if I don't like their product, I don't have to work with that company, and I can say
Sure.
whatever I want to about it. Now, I try to choose not to say anything bad about another particular business person or company unless they are intentionally deceiving people and scamming them. That one I will call out every single time.
Sure.
But if I just prefer one product over another, I'll just say I prefer this product, not I don't like that one so much.
Well, unless somebody pushes you. If you say, "I prefer A over B," somebody's naturally going to ask, "Well, what don't you like about B?" You can either opt to tell them what you don't like about it, or you can just pass.
Right. And I'll usually lean on this is what I like about this product here. I can like this because of XYZ. And I
Yeah,
really just kind of leave. I try and cut the negative stuff out. You know what I mean?
right.
If
Yeah,
you're ever in a room and there's somebody talking negative about other people in that room, you can
right.
bet that you're the next one who's going to be out of the room and the one being talked about. That's
Yeah.
usually how that works out. So,
But bear in mind, when we're talking about the vices and virtues of a particular tool, that should never be taken personally. For
mm,
example, if someone points out an error in one of my books, I don't take that personally. I appreciate them pointing out the mistake, and I try to fix it.
absolutely.
So, and if
Absolutely.
someone I would assume that tool makers would prefer to know what the downsides of their tools are.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Exactly.
guess the key there is not to take criticism personally.
Hmm. And it's
Right.
difficult because in this social media world, people can get so nasty. You know, people can just get
Oh,
really
sure.
mean, really ugly, really nasty, and it takes some thick skin to kind of let that shed off. And people get really self-conscious over that.
Right.
And you know, I've even been guilty of it too. Like, you're going to come at me, well, I'm going to come back at you. And it's like, hey, you know what? I've actually got something way better to be doing. So I don't have time for this anymore.
Yeah.
We do have one good question that came up over here. Dave, your opinion of Jeff Sitar, who was another legend that passed away.
Great manipulator, no question about it. Right up there with Skip and Phil Scherer and Scott Gray and Mike Swearzy and Elad Israeli and a few other guys that are at the top of the manipulation heap. And Jeff was also a hell of a nice guy. Liked the heck out of him. It was absolutely awful what happened to him. May he rest in peace. Yeah, he was terrific, terrific manipulator and a very nice guy.
Absolutely. We got one other question here that says, Diebold Tech, how often do you upgrade your documentation for the membership to have present info at NSO?
Um, Not sure I understand the question. The
Maybe. he can write it again. I'll read it just as he wrote it. How often do you upgrade your documentation for the membership to have the present info? I guess maybe what he's saying is, how often do you upgrade your databases? Really, I think that's a misunderstanding of the web page. The web page's update and information is actually done through the membership. The members post the information for the most
That's right.
part, and then we engage and help. And then, if nobody else really kind of chimes in, then you kind of chime in and really help them out and knock it out of the park. One other thing that I think may answer this question is, you do a seasonal type of newsletter that goes out that has a specific theme, and that is your new technical bulletin content. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's
Okay,
right.
you tell us a little bit about that. How do you choose the topics, and when do you send it out, and what do you do when you're preparing for that bulletin?
Well, I used to put a little bit of everything in each issue. I thought that was important. 30. We started NSO in 1992, and each issue would have a high security safe. We had categories: bread and butter, regular things that guys are going to see commonly. We had an Ask Dave feature, et cetera, et cetera. I've since changed that to doing specific topics or specific types of safes. For example, I'm working right now on a series of magazines devoted to Mosler fire safes. They're a little complicated. They're hard to ID. So we're going to do, I think, 4 consecutive issues. The first one just went out. And they're devoted to, one will be devoted to Mosler fire safes with the B6 lock.
Mm-hmm.
Another one, Mosler fire safes with the B101 and other small case locks. Mosler fire safes with the 120 series locks. And finally, Mosler fire safes with the 302. Mm-hmm. Including methods for telling which one you have, because all those locks have different drill points. So you want to first be able to identify which lock you have so that you can then use the correct drill point. You don't want to use a 120 drill point on a 302, for example. Mm-hmm. You'll make a mess.
Yeah, you're gonna get into trouble really quick.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just going to shout out the number here. We've got 91 people, just letting you know how many people are watching right here now live. I bet after this goes up, people watching the recording who couldn't get off work on time. Should be a fairly popular interview here. Let's see. Let's go down the list and let's hit another question. There's one in the chat box over here. Let me just say, for everybody that's watching, if there is a person who is highly regarded in this industry, I guarantee Dave knows who they are by name. Another one would be Mr. Harry Shear, who teaches manipulation as well.
Sure. Another really nice guy, super knowledgeable guy. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Harry's amazing.
Side note, someone loves the humor that you put in your books.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. All right. So let's see here.
By the way, humor is always tough, whether it's live like we are now or whether it's in a book. You never really know how your attempt at humor is going to land on the listener or the reader. It's always a bit of a crapshoot.
Especially nowadays with cancel culture.
Well, I don't let cancel culture worry me at all. I speak my mind on issues, even though I go hard against the far left in the U.S. anyway. I speak my mind. I wish everybody would, but I understand that some people can't because they don't want to get fired.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that, and there's a lot of people who actually, I know you, and I've seen a lot of what you have to say and back and forth and whatnot, and you're actually willing to listen to the other side, and that's where a lot of the difference comes in play. Most people just want to be the loudest voice in the room, say the most, outlandish and vulgar thing, drop the mic, and then feel like they won and leave. That is not your particular style. You actually have a little bit of logic behind what you have to say in those particular instances.
Well, you mentioned philosophy earlier. My background is in academic philosophy, and one of the rules, if you're going to be in philosophy and write a paper, is that you state your case. Then you are required by the rules of philosophy that are de facto rules, not de jure, but you're required to give the very best objection that the other side can give to your view. In other words, you can't straw man it. You can't straw man the other side in philosophy. You have to steel man it. Give the view that you are criticizing the very best rendering you can. And the goal always is to give it such a good rendering that an adherent of the position you're criticizing would say, yeah, Dave nailed it. That is exactly my view. But most of the time in discourse, especially on social media, you don't see that. You don't see people giving the best rendering of the other side. You see them giving the worst rendering. And that just chaps my butt. That's not a fair way to play the argumentative game.
No, it's not. And much like you follow that, I actually have been diving quite deeply into psychology and what unlocks the mind. How does the mind? Why do people do what they do? And a lot of times, that's the first step in engaging with somebody. Is if you can't understand their perspective or their side of things, whether it's a customer, an employee, a spouse, anybody, a friend, a coworker, if you can't understand where they're coming from, you have no chance in influencing the outcome of that particular situation. You're just going over Niagara Falls with no oars. That's all there is to it. You have to understand, and you have to be able to communicate well enough to understand what they're trying to communicate to you, or you're not going to have a conversation at all.
Yep, that's right.
All righty. So tell us about your greatest professional triumph.
Well, the thing I've spent most of my time doing when I'm in my office is working out drill points and revising them and revising them and revising them until I'm happy with them. And my most favorite drill point, it's actually not a drill point. My favorite thing, the thing I'm most proud of, was unlocking the secret to Diebold's jeweler's chests. I saw lots and lots and lots of them, and I noticed something. I thought, dang. They use these indirect drive locks. The dial can be up here and the lock can be over here somewhere. But I noticed that on the inside, Diebold almost always, not always, but almost always, put the lock in the very center of the door, up and down wise. So I came up with a cool little method of finding lock center, which isn't a drill point, but we make our drill point deduction based on what we know to be lock center. So the trick was the gear train in Diebold's jeweler's chest happens to be 3.5 inches long. So you would take the dial off, usually a screw in the middle, and just run your 3.5-inch wire down and mark where it intersects the midline in the door. That's lock center. And then you can deduce your drill point from there and drill the door. I was thrilled to work that out. It was probably my favorite article, or second favorite article of all time that I wrote, just because I was super happy to have finally solved that long-standing mystery.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's what it seems like. It seems like just kind of you've compiled a lifetime of content and information. Now utilizing that and organizing it and maximizing it to its fullest potential is really what kind of makes you tick right now and really satisfies you, is what I'm getting.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Let's see. So tell us about a professional regret. Is there anything that maybe you wish you'd have done a little bit differently or that didn't happen?
Oh, sure. A person who doesn't have regret, I think, needs to look in the mirror a little bit more. We all mess up from time to time. I deeply regret the friction that existed between NSO and SAVTA in the early days. I tended to be much more easily angered back then. What happened was some of my guys, I had put together some tests, and you could become a certified master safecracker or a journeyman or a well, SAVTA refused at a convention to respect our credentials. My guys wanted to have, a CMT or CMS after their name on their badge, going to an Aloha show or a SAVTA show. And they were denied, and it got back to me, and one thing led to another, and I regret saying a lot of the things. I was just way too angry back then. And I made some ill-tempered remarks, and I'm not going to duck what I said. I called some of the Aloha people gold suits. It was just a terrible thing to say. I shouldn't have said that, But I was mad, and they were mad, and they didn't want to give NSO any airtime, any oxygen. I understand now why it was competitive in nature, but I deeply regret some of the things that were said. I'm just lucky that um, either then or shortly after that, my good friend Skip was at the helm of SAFTA, and we were always very close, so there were no issues at all when Skip was there. But yeah,
Yeah,
if I could go back and change that, I would.
absolutely. Absolutely. And like you said, you're not really living full out. You're not playing 100% if you're not finding the boundaries of what you can actually do in this industry, whether that's, trying different opening techniques, acquiring a new skill, pushing what you can do in the industry as far as where your literature can go or where your other skill sets can go. Until you hit a wall, you haven't hit a boundary. And therefore, I always like to press everything right to the edge. And sometimes that means dipping a toe over, and a little bit of regret comes from that. I know I can
Yeah,
definitely relate to you. And I've said a lot of things to a lot of people online that probably didn't deserve it at one point in time or another. And it is what it is.
yeah,
I can't go back and take it away, but I can
sure.
sure control what we do now and engage those situations a little bit differently. And kind of on that note, when I first really started to get into this industry, like I said, there was not a lot of information at that particular time. There was certainly no lockpicking lawyer, no YouTube. I mean, YouTube was available, but there wasn't any information on lockpicking or locksmithing, and certainly not safecracking at that point in time.
There was. You just didn't know about NSO. We've existed for 31 years now, but we have
Right.
a very low profile, and I like it that way.
Absolutely. I didn't have the credentials to get into those organizations at that
Mm,
particular point in time either.
right.
So literally one of the things I had to do is I bought a whole truckload of Liberty safes that were all lockouts. I bought them for pennies on the dollar. I got my education in a storage unit with a lamp, battery powered light, and just went to town. I was like, hey, I'm not going to destroy customer safes. I'll open these, figure out what the tricks are. And I'm talking these things fell flat on their face, everything blown apart, drywall busted apart in there, just the worst case scenarios. And then I would be able to get them open, rebuild them, put a new lock on them, and then sell them. So I was getting an education on my own. That's how bad I wanted it.
Yeah,
And I was able to go ahead and make a profit on it on the end.
sure.
So, that's just what it took to be able to get to this particular point.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Uh, what is your kryptonite?
Well, the jobs that I dread the most, to be honest, are high security safes with a particular key lock that I don't have a tool for.
Hmm.
That's when I wish I was Phil Shearer. Yeah,
Yeah.
though, and we can always get them open by drilling, but some of them are a huge pain in the ass to
Yeah.
drill. They're just a pain.
Mm.
Sometimes the stump won't knock off cleanly with a punch, and if you drill it, you got a little kachinka sticking up there that's hitting the levers. It just, yeah, those are
Absolutely.
the ones I cross my fingers and hope that I have a pick or a decoder, and if I don't, yeah, we have to drill.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you do when you're getting ready, or maybe even before or now you still go through a process when you've got a real contender, when you've got a real bank vault or a real nasty box or a real nasty container or something burglarized or something that really kind of you're just like, man, this is just going to be a dogfight. What does your mindset go? What is your level? What do you start out at home? How do you get in the mindset, and then how do you execute that out in the field?
Well, I've learned that for me, I can't take anything for granted, including memory. Um, some of my worst botch jobs were when I just through arrogance or hubris or whatever thought I didn't need to do any research because I've opened lots of those and try something that just falls flat and that I would have known would have fallen flat if I had just brought up one photo and looked at, say, a Lagarde 3330 and realized that you can't go through a mounting screw because it's in a tube. Can't view the. I did that. So yeah, I've learned that, especially on difficult jobs, that I have to slow down and go through the steps one by one on what I'm going to need to do to get that open. Now, when you're going to fly to a job, that's important anyway, because you want to go through each step and note the tools that you'll need. You want to make sure they're in your in your checked baggage. You never want to get to Timbuktu and be missing something that's really, really important. So I'll go through the process. I need to do this, 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 and I visualize it in my mind. And as corny as this sounds, I visualize myself swinging the handle and pulling that vault door open. It works great. I like that. It's almost then you're just following a recipe. Like, your wife makes cookies. Well, you're opening safes. You're just following a different recipe.
This much sugar, this much flour,
Yeah.
baked at 375 for 15 minutes. Yeah, no, I get that. And I do the same thing, especially when I have one kicking my tail for that day. Like you pick up the phone and you're like, all right, I'll come by and take a look at it. And, it'll either go one of two ways. Either we'll get it open right away because I haven't had time to do any research on that particular container or not. Something simple, or we're going to be going to battle and I'm going to have to pack for bear tomorrow. So then we'll kind of go over it at night. All right, this thing is coming open, and it's like a prize fight boxer. Like there's two going in and one's coming out, and it's going to be me, and that's it, or I'll die doing it. There's only two outcomes to this.
That has to be the mentality, and anybody that's good in this business has it. We won't give up.
Yeah,
there's just no such thing as giving up and walking away from a locked container. Because if we walk away, that means somebody else has to come open it. Well, by God, if they can do it, why can't we? Yeah,
exactly. Exactly. And even if it comes down to, and I'm sure this has happened to you quite a bit, people will run into a wall and then maybe they'll fly you out or have somebody else come out. I know I've certainly in Colorado, it's really good to have people that you can network with.
Right.
Sometimes you do just need that extra help. And if it's an extra guy or an extra friend, that's what it needs. And sometimes you just have to walk away from it. Whatever you're doing, the insanity loop kind of kicks in and you keep doing the same thing over and over again. You need to have a fresh set of eyes on it, or you just got to walk away from it and come back.
Sure. And if I can say,
go ahead.
The Colorado Safecrackers are about as tight-knit a group as I know of anywhere. You all like each other. You all get along. You work well with each other. I wish that were the case everywhere.
Yeah.
You guys are the model for the rest of us to follow.
Well, we certainly appreciate that. And anytime, anybody wants to come have dinner with us at a show or at a pen party or whatever, we try and welcome everybody in. That's the whole thing, is it's extremely welcoming.
Sure.
Try and bring people together, because you don't know when that one person has that photo or that piece of information or knowledge that you call them up and then the light bulb clicks. 5 minutes later, the thing's open and it's been kicking your tail for 5 hours,
That's right. I didn't realize how tight knit they were down there till I flew down there to work on I forget now if it was a Stockinger or a Trom safe with those guys, and they all showed up.
Yeah.
They were John and Lou and
David.
Yes.
And
Wes wasn't there, but the rest of them were, and they're just the nicest guys in the world. Just a pleasure to work with.
I am very, very lucky to be a part of that and to be a part of the whole thing. And usually we'll all travel together, fly together, cruise together, get a rental car together, go to dinner. And it's just a way to really work together. And the biggest thing is nobody really fights over, what am I getting out of this? It's when I get a phone call and I see one of my Colorado brothers that needs a hand, the first question is not how much. It is, what do you need and when can I be there? What's the address? And that's the mindset that people need to get behind, because as soon as how much, then they don't want to make the call.
Yeah. So, by the way, did it shock any of you Colorado guys that Wes moved down to Texas? Was that a surprise to you guys, or had you seen it coming? Had he been?
I had no idea. I had no idea whatsoever. He just called me up, and that was that. So no clue whatsoever. Yeah, that was crazy. Let's see here. Let's get down the list. What key system do you use on your home? Do you use electronic locks, or I don't know where that one came. You don't have to answer.
Oh, it's fine. My lock knowledge is limited. I was a locksmith, 50 years ago. I haven't been since '82. Gosh, I don't know what you guys call them. They're the quickset keyway with the little hole in the cylinder.
Quickset smart key.
That are hard to pick but easy to whack the cylinder out of with one of those polar doohickeys. Yeah, that's what's on it came on the house. I never changed them. I just had a buddy rekey it when I moved in.
Ah, gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So let's see. Going down the line here, what's your work van or truck? Chevy or Ford or something else?
Chrysler.
Chrysler. Okay.
Yeah, I
Cool.
have a Chrysler Pacifica, and I absolutely love it. Yeah, it's a great van.
And I know that the Chevy Astro, Skip really put that thing on the map because that was his ride, and that was my mentor's ride, and that was the first service vehicle I had. They're
Yeah,
small, they park well, they're all-wheel drive, they got plenty of power. Just a great little vehicle. Just, you can't really get inside them like some people like to do.
sure. Well, when I bought my Pacifica, it was at the time the only van that came available as a hybrid. So I bought the hybrid and absolutely love it. And what I realized is that if I'm not going out on a job, if I'm just tootling around town, going to the store, I have enough charge to just run on the battery.
Yep.
I don't even
Yeah.
use gas. I absolutely love it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's great. Let's see.
Plus, I'm conservative politically, and I love tweaking my liberal friends who don't have hybrids by saying, I have a hybrid. What do you drive? An SUV. Ah.
Yes. All right. So, what is the best advice for somebody who's just getting started in this industry, in the safe and vault world? What advice would you give to them if you were talking to somebody one-on-one, having a beer at a bar? What would you tell this young man or woman?
Well, that depends on where they are. Are they trying to get into the industry, which is difficult, or are they already in and just wondering how they can improve their skills?
Let's say it's their first pen party.
Well, if it's their first pen party, they have to be in the trade already.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. That's the most difficult hurdle to get over. I have people all the time contacting me. Hey, how do you get into that? I'd like to get into that. A lot of military people getting out of the military are interested in becoming a locksmith or a safe tech, and they'll email me. And there's no quick answer there. You just have to hit the pavement and throw out as many applications locally as you can and hope that something hits. If they're already in the industry, it's a piece of cake then. Really, in this game, in the safe cracking game, once a guy or gal learns the basics, how to do basic dialing diagnostics, how to pull the various dials. There's only 3 or 4 dial pulling methods that we ever use. It's not like there's a million of them.
Mm-hmm.
And once they learn how to drill through the various hard plates, and there aren't that many different types of hard plates. They're just a small handful of them to get familiar with. Learn how to scope and transfer, learn how to do a no transfer scope pull, learn how to punch lock bolts and door bolts. Once they learn the basics and can punch fire safes, once they learn those things, it becomes obvious to them, whoa, this is really at bottom an information game. Once I learn the techniques, I just need to know where to drill to employ that particular technique. And it opens up a whole new horizon for most people. Their eyes are opened for the first time that way. Because when you really think about it, how many different methods do we use to open safes? 5 or 6? That's it.
Yeah.
But the catch and the hard part is using the right one at the right point on the right safe.
Yes, that is all. That is it. It is, and there's multiple ways to open one container. Let's not
Right.
forget that. We can pick through, I got a laundry list of 10 different ways, 20 different ways to open this container, different drill points, different options, different tools. What am I going to use on this one? Well, I'm going to start decoding and start going through a process of elimination of, all right, well, there's a wall on this side, so side drilling is not going to be an option, or there's a ceiling, so we're not really going to be able to do that. Is it a drop ceiling? Can I throw a tile up and get up in there? Or what can I do? What's the access like? Do I have the safe moving equipment to pull it away from that wall if I have to?
Right.
What is going to be the path of least resistance? And then if I run into a wall, and let's say we snap off a carbide burr in there in the hole, and then you just created, a wall. Do I have a plan B? And then if that goes south, do I have a plan C, D, E, F until the door swings? There is no if, it's just until. What am I going to do until? Right. So that's great.
That's right.
And then as far as people getting into the industry, great organizations like Aloha and SAFTA are great ways to start. You can pay your membership dues for that. It'll at least get you the background check that you need to see if you can qualify. depending on your state and the licensing, that's going to be a problem for some people too. Now, Colorado is a no license state. That's my favorite joke when people ask me, hey, are you licensed to do this stuff? I'm like, nope, you got to have a license to drive a car, but I don't have to have one to break into it. So, and then you get a little chuckle out of them. But understanding your local laws would probably be the number one thing that you need to do. Understanding your local licensing would be the number two. If you are flat green, no experience, never been a locksmith, don't even understand how it works, those are the first two things. And then go to an association or an organization, NSO, LOA, SAFTA, all these different ones, and get an information packet. Find out what you need to do, build that blueprint, and then you can start working your way into these pen parties. You can start working your way into getting classes. Speaking of which, you're going to be in Texas.
In 2 weeks, yeah.
In 2 weeks. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I don't know a lot about it. The TLA, the Texas Locksmith Association, is bringing me in to teach a pen party. It's in, I hope I say this right, Pflugerville?
Mm-hmm.
Our Texans will let me know if that's wrong. So I'm flying into Austin, and I don't know if they're going to pick me up or if I'm going to rent a car and head down to the hotel. I do like that everything is at the same hotel.
Yeah.
I'm staying in the same place where the safes and the classroom and the exhibits are going to be. I'll be exhibiting on Saturday. I think it's from 10 to 2. Mm-hmm. I'll just be touting NSO, and hopefully my personal hotspot on my phone will work so I can show people that come by all about NSO and the forum.
Yeah. And that's great. So anybody who's out there who is in the industry, if you want to take one of Dave's classes, it will be, what is the actual date? Is it October 21st? I can look it up. I'll find it. But anyways, it's going to be one of the rare times. I was actually very surprised to see your name on there. Normally you host your own training events. You usually don't become a part of other associations' training events. You usually just kind of go do your own thing. But this one, they managed to woo you in.
Yeah, I do both, Wayne. I've taught for many locksmith associations around the country.
Oh, okay. Very good. And you'll like it down there. It's a really nice organization. The people are really nice. I taught social media marketing down there 1 year, and it was fantastic. The people are absolutely wonderful. They'll treat you right. Everybody's really friendly. That, Southern Texas hospitality comes through, and it's just a great bunch of people. I can't say enough good things about the Texas Locksmith Association.
Yeah, I agree. I've been at Roland. I think I've taught at Roland for 18 or 19 consecutive years until COVID, of course. So yeah, you're right. My son has gone with me a couple of times, and he absolutely loves the Texas atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you tell your 18-year-old self?
It'll get better. If you think about what life was like for a safecracker back in 1974 or 5, we didn't have a drill rig. Mr. Corey and I had a big screwdriver and a chain. We also had a come along, but you had to have access around the entire safe to use the come along. Now, I hated using the come along because unless where you were drilling was perfectly centered in the front of that safe, the come along tended to really pull your drill motor to the side hard. And of course, I was the one holding the motor. Man, buddy, sometimes it was hard to hold it nice and straight. We had no scopes. We had the Champion spark plug light I mentioned earlier. So I would tell my 18-year-old safe, just hang in there for now. In just a few years, your job is going to become a dream.
Technology is coming to save the day.
That's right.
It'll get better. This too shall pass.
Yeah, well said.
All right. Let's see here. What would you like to say to Mr. C.L. Corey?
Oh, my goodness. Well, when you look at Diary of a Safe Man and you see how this guy worked way back, around World War I, between World War I and World War II, on how competent he was. He made his own manipulator for straight tailpiece locks. He was way ahead of the game back then. I would just shake his hand and tell him, number one, thank you for showing us the way and showing us how important that documenting safes and vaults is. It's super important. You don't want to have to wing it on every opening. You'd like to have some information compiled. Number two, just utterly in awe of his ability to do what he did with the tools that he did. And of course, number three, I would have to thank him for fathering Eugene Corey, my mentor. That's
Yes.
probably the most important thing.
Imagine what they would do if they saw the tools and phones and
Oh my
all the
gosh.
stuff all the toys we got now.
Yeah, if CL could see how easily we can drill through most hard plates today, even in old jewelers' chests and bankers' safes, it would blow his mind.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy.
I mean, can you imagine, Wayne, say 100 years ago or 130 years ago, having to delaminate a jeweler's chest to get it open because you had no way to drill a hole all the way through it?
That
So
sounds
you would
brutal.
grind on the front, expose the screws that are holding the lamination on, drill them all out as best you can with your little hand crank. Are you kidding me? Take that lamination off, do the same for the next lamination. Many of these doors were 5-ply. That's 5 laminate. No, thank you. I just
No.
can't imagine it. Yeah.
That sounds like breaking big rocks into small rocks and making gravel.
Yeah.
We probably wouldn't have been so interested in the trade. Oh my
Yeah, I
goodness.
don't think, even though it would have been much more difficult, I doubt the thrill would have been as good or as thrilling, to pull the door open. I don't know.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it would have been a slower process, that's for sure, as opposed to the click and turn. Boy, that's the satisfying part of it.
Yeah.
Who do you look up to in the industry?
Well, the person I most admired was probably Harry Miller. I don't think there's ever been anybody in the industry whose passion exceeded Harry's. And by way of proof, just consider this. Harry invited me to his place for dinner in the late 80s or early 90s. So I show up and Barbara's making dinner and I'm looking around. There are locks everywhere. We had to move locks. He had a giant dining room table. We had to move locks to make room for a couple of plates.
Oh,
The stairs going up to his office, absolutely covered with combo locks on mounts. I mean, Harry had the passion that there was just second to none. But the thing I loved about Harry is I could ask him anything. And if he didn't know, he had no hesitation. He would say, Dave, I don't know. I like that. My grandpa used to always say, never trust a man who never says, I don't know. Harry was not afraid to venture a guess or to say he didn't know. And I learned a ton. I learned so much from him in that one afternoon and evening. We spent a lot of time at his file cabinets going. He had a terrific collection of old antique literature on safes and safe locks. And I got a lot of my model numbers and names from Harry that particular day. Outside of Harry, the guys that I have the greatest admiration for in the industry are all the specialists. People like Phil Scherer. His key lock mastery is just awe-inspiring. Think of Lance Mayhew, the spiking wizard. Or, there's a dozen guys that are just ridiculously good at manipulation. Those of us who learned manipulation in the 70s and the 80s, we pretty much, think of the speed thing. When Skip and I were banging him on his kitchen table, you make an assumption. You assume that your lock is going to read out 3, 2, 1 because you don't have time to prove anything. You've got to get that baby open and win the contest. You're not going to waste time proving anything. You're going to make sure that you hopefully you get a lock that reads out 3, 2, 1.
Right.
So the specialists, I just have great admiration for the time, by the way. All specialists are also generalists. They open a wide variety of safes, but they have taken the time to acquire these terrific skills in very narrow areas like manipulation, key lock picking, decoding, and spiking. Then there are the guys who are just so ridiculously clever, like Mike Madden, who figured out how to beat the XO7 with a little can of glue. He did a lot of other things besides that. Most of the big lock manufacturers used Mike to test not only their products, but their competitors' products to see if they had vulnerabilities that weren't yet exposed. Then, of course, Shane Ellison who in North Carolina is probably the world's greatest wizard on using wires. The things that Shane does with wires, we all are pretty good. Every safecracker has to be halfway decent with wires, or you can't be very good at your job. Shane takes it to a whole new level. And not just that, the things that Shane has done things with bank vaults, which is my primary area, that no one else has done. He made a robotic tool for going through ventilator holes and has opened many vaults with this big old long robotic arm. He made one for me too, which I love and appreciate. So those are the guys that I most admire, the guys that really have specialties and special skills that the rest of us don't have, or don't have to the same degree.
Absolutely. And it's just amazing to see the way that they came up with this. You're like, wait a minute, because you kind of get to see a little bit of everything, because when somebody comes up with something new, of course they want to be proud about it and they want to say, hey, look at what I did, and then contribute. They're also trying to contribute their knowledge. I mean, humans, we go back to caveman times when you had to earn your keep. If you wanted to be part of the tribe, you had to bring some value to it. You had to, either work or hunt or do something to make sure that you were valuable, or you're an elder and you contained the information. Everybody had to bring something to the table. And that's what I love about your website is everybody brings something to the table. Everybody brings their own thing. And there's not usually people that are just constantly take. Usually they'll at least come back. And if they were helped, and that's kind of an unwritten rule, if you got help and you requested help, boy, you should come back and you should follow up and tell us what did or didn't work, because maybe we may not use that information right now, but I know it's right up here and I know that I can use it on the next time down the road.
That's right.
Let's see, more questions here. Do you have anything else to say about Mr. Skip Eckhart? You kind of get to be the voice for him, and I know he had so much to contribute to this industry, and he was taken far too soon. And I really, you make it a point at almost every pen party or every time you have a crowd of people to mention him and bring his name and keep his name alive. Is there anything else you'd like to say about Skip?
Well, he had a terrific sense of humor. One of the greatest industry pranks ever pulled, and there have been a few down through the years. Speaking of you, Dave Fullerton and Kenny Heemstra and Ron Jewell. Oh my gosh. No, the prank that Skip pulled on Phil was this. Skip knew that Phil was leaving town on a job. He was going down to Florida to pick a key lock. Of course he was going down to Florida to pick a key lock. So what Skip did is he FedExed his wallet to Phil's wife. And Phil's wife set it on the nightstand the day that Phil was returning from Florida. I hope I'm not misremembering Florida. Phil will remind me if I am. So Phil gets home late that night. He's tired. He comes in the house, gets undressed, brushes his teeth, gets ready for bed, comes and sits down on his side of the bed, looks over at the nightstand and sees a man's wallet. Well, there's a second of pure freaking panic there. He's like, what the hell is this? His wife's in bed looking the other way. He's like, oh my gosh. He picks the wallet up, opens it, and sees a driver's license to one Skip Franklin Eckert.
that took some planning.
If I remember right, Phil said that he howled and laughed so loud that he woke up his kids. He loved it. Skip did another thing. He and Phil, I think Phil was with him on this trip. They used to go to England. This sounds so weird to say it, but two Americans used to go to England to teach the Brits how to pick key locks. And one time while they were over there, Skip was trying to open I think it was an SLS or SMP, I can't remember the safe now, had a 4-wheel lock on it. And he was manipulating all night long, well into the night. Mark Miller stayed with him for hours, after everybody else was gone. But finally, by I think 1 or 2 o'clock, everybody was gone and it was just Skip. Well, come morning time, this is in the classroom, by the way. Come morning time, people start filing into the classroom where Skip and Phil are going to teach. And sticking out of that safe that Skip was manipulating the prior day is an American flag. The stand for the flag was on the inside of the safe, and the flag was sticking through the door jamb. Obviously, how brilliant is that as a way to let the class know that I got it open?
I got it. I got you. Short of a picture or something being in there, that's perfect. And yes, that is very odd for people that don't understand why it would be odd for Americans to go over to the UK to do lockpicking, key lockpicking, is because really in our industry, American high security safes are kind of viewed as a little bit of a lower market or a tin can, if you will, compared to a lot of the European safes. And that is because there's just been crime there and more sophisticated people for longer. So they had to come up with more. They had more time to come up with more ingenious ways and secure ways to lock that container up. So when we're bidding a job or we're picking a job to go do, and you hear it's a tan, it's a chub, it's something nasty from overseas, you're like, man, I'm going to have to really pack a lunch. And it's going to be just a little bit different because it's not US, standard footprint, standard lock, standard things that we're really familiar with.
Yeah.
All righty, going down the list here. We'll keep knocking them out. Do you want to talk about your book, Safecracker, just a little bit?
No.
Okay.
I'd rather talk about the one I'm writing.
All right, go ahead. Let's go on this one.
I love Safecracker, and I'm happy that the book is still selling.
Mm-hmm.
But my agent has me writing a novel, and here's the setup. I'm myself. It's a novel, but it's features a real person, me. I'm the only real person in it, I guess. And I'm called out to open a vault in a home. And that's only happened to me 4 or 5 times in my entire career. And so I'm in this home, and come to find out later in the book that the people who called me out had full documentation, but they aren't the actual owners of the home. Mm-hmm. So things take a turn. I don't want to say for the worst, but things do take a turn about midway through the book. I'm super excited about it because in Safecracker, my agent had me take out basically all of the philosophy. That book was 100,000 words originally. So all the philosophy got removed, and it's all stuck back in this book, which the working title, which I probably won't get when it goes to the publisher, but the working title is Conversations at the Vault. And we cover everything. Is there a God? Do we have free will? How do we know what's right and what's wrong? Are there better and worse ways of living? Are there better and worse forms of government? All those sorts of questions we tackle in this book that got taken out of Safecracker.
Let me ask you a question on that, since we'll sprinkle a little bit of this in here now. A lot of times you hear a lot of guys saying, the good old days, the good old days. Are times better now? What is the best time period to actually be in? Do you think that the good old days are past, the golden years are gone, or do you think that right now we have more technology and more tools and more things at our disposal than at any other point in history?
Well, if you mean with respect to being in the safe and vault industry, absolutely. This is a fantastic time to be in the industry. Look at all the recent innovations. We have the Phoenix, the little black box. We have the Alpha, the little magnetic rig. So many great innovations are coming out. Yeah, I'd much rather be doing this work now than at any time in the past. And now, more generally, it's hard to know. Right. More generally, is this a good time to be alive? Well, not if the world's going to come to an end next week or next year, but we never know those things.
Well, it's coming to an end at all times if you pay attention to the news too much. So try and not watch that quite as much. Good stuff. The next question was, any new books on the horizon, but you just addressed that. So looking forward to that for sure. When you do complete that, how do you get that information out there? When your new book comes out, how will people know about it?
Well, of course, I'll announce it in NSO, both in the magazine and on the forum. And I'll probably shoot little things out to friends in the industry to like you, for example, to put on your website. The word will get out, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Have you ever been offered a movie deal, documentary, anything like that?
Yeah, my agent told him no. When he first signed on as my agent, and I was so lucky, I landed Richard Curtis. He's In the list of agents, he's known as the 7th most powerful agent in the country. So I got super lucky that he has a real liking for safe cracking and lockpicking and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I forgot the question, Wayne.
Movie deal.
Oh, movie deal. Yeah. Well, Richard said early on that I'm Richard speaking. Said I'm going to make more money on the eventual movie deal from your book than I will from the book royalties, because he anticipated that it would happen. It hasn't yet. We had the only bite that we've had in that regard was from a studio that specializes in documentaries, and he was like, I don't think that's the one for you. And I'm like, okay, I trust your judgment, Richard. So we passed.
Yeah.
Waiting. It may have been a mistake. It may never come. We'll see.
It's tough. It's very tough, especially for somebody in your position. If you do make a movie or a documentary, you have to be so careful, and you're going to have to draw your own line, because you almost create a lot of enemies doing that. If you show something, you're going to have people saying, well, you shouldn't be showing that on TV. For the general public to see. If you don't do it accurately, then you're going to get criticized by the technicians because it's not accurate. So there's a really weird line to follow, and I have to try and just draw my own line too. I'm like, look, I'm not showing lock picking or safe opening videos on public on YouTube. I've got a private website for that. People pay, and you have to be in the industry, just like your page. But that's just kind of the line that you have to walk there. So it's difficult what you can even put in there. And then guess what? People don't want following them around when you're working on their vault or on their safe in their home, a camera, so that's pretty difficult to do.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of people get a little concerned about a camera, and oddly, it's never or rarely in a commercial setting where they're up in arms. It's residential.
Yeah.
If you're working on a guy's gun safe in his garage, he'll be way more concerned about the photo than the manager of McDonald's will if you're shooting up the major safe that they have. They don't care.
Well, he's just an hourly employee, doesn't care. Some guys, he's got his life savings, his coin collection, his baseball card or whatever in there. He's going to be way more concerned. And, people that tend to have big, large gun safes at home tend to be a little bit more on that side of the fence, and they're a little bit more conspiracy theory in most cases, and a little more on edge about what's being done. That's a great question for you.
By the way, let me just interrupt to say, in those cases where I sense that a gun safe owner is a little concerned about the camera, I'll stop what I'm doing and let them know that this is standard operating procedure. I'll show them the photos that are already on my computer. I mean, most safes I've got lots of on my computer. I can show them. Once they see that this is just standard operating procedure for this guy, you can see the relief wash over their face. They're instantly put at ease, because what's really motivating them, they're not even conscious of it. It's more primal. It's that, is this guy going to come back at 2 a.m. and burgle me? That's right. Really what they're worried about, even if it's not consciously, at the front of their mind. That's the worry that people have, and you can just see them. They're very happy when they realize, this guy has no intention of burglarizing me. He just has a massive safe and vault photo collection.
Right. And that was actually going to be my question, is what do you tell people to calm them down a little bit when they if you start to sense that there's causing some tension with you taking photos? And you answered that beautifully. I find myself in this position all the time too, because I take out my camera and, I got to get a million pictures of things. The two of the things that I'll use is, number one, I need to document this so I can make sure that we put everything back together. It's part of my assembly and disassembly or PM process. I want to make sure that it looks the same when we put it all back together again, especially if we're changing a lock out or doing any tightening or doing any kind of lubricating on anything. And the other one is insurance purposes. Hey, I have to document that I was here with this time and date stamp with this safe and the condition that I left it in. So if it changes condition, I can actually prove, hey, that wasn't me, because that hole or that hammer mark or that pry mark was not there when I left.
Exactly. Yep.
Those are two of the ones that I use.
Beautiful.
Great stuff. Are you able to talk about the Prince safe opening, and do you want to talk about it?
I can now. I couldn't for a few years after, but I can now.
Go ahead. Tell us all about it. Tell us, how did you get the phone call? Tell us from A to B, A to open.
Well, I'm at my desk and I get an email from a law firm in Minneapolis, and it was so cryptic. I couldn't understand what they wanted. I get a lot of emails from people asking certain questions about safes and vaults, and I misread this one. I thought it was BS, so I ignored it.
No.
And they emailed me again the next day, and it still didn't make any sense. And then I got an email from a couple of companies in the Midwest saying, "Hey, you might want to answer those emails from this law firm in Minneapolis." To which I said, "Well, why?" "Can't tell you. Just do it." So eventually we connected with each other and everything got worked out. The lady that I dealt with at the firm happened to have been Prince's personal attorney for years before she went to work for this other firm.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot her name. Tracy was her first name. Super nice lady. We put it all together. She picked me up at the airport, bought me a Starbucks Americano, a nice hot one, and drove me out to Paisley Park. And wow, what a place. What an amazing place, really.
Wow.
We walked in, there were people everywhere. You know, I was just intimidated as heck. I mean, I was a guitar player. I'm still am. I play guitar, love guitar, always have. And Prince really, in my judgment, never got the credit for being the world-class guitarist that he was. And it's because he had all these other skills. He was a great songwriter, an electrifying performer, what have you, a producer. And his guitar playing skills kind of got overlooked. He was fantastic. He was one of the all-time greats.
Yeah, he shadowed his own performance because he was so good at all the other things.
Yeah, well, he played every instrument on his first album.
Yeah,
that's just amazing. So
pure talent.
Yeah. So Tracy introduces me to all the bankers and the lawyers and everybody that was there, and we made our way into the vault room. Yeah, it was kind of a little funny little story. I noticed that everything on the walls and on the floor was covered in plastic. I'm like, well, what the heck is this? So I look over at the archivist who I was working with. His name was James, super nice guy from upstate New York, and a world-renowned expert on digital archiving. And he said, "Whoa, I see Dave, what happened here is we didn't know what you were going to do, so we put plastic over everything just in case the explosions caused dust in the air and what have you." And I did my best not to smirk or smile, and I just assured him, "Nope, no explosions, James. We're just going to drill a little bitty hole through this thick vault door and get it open that way." And that's what we did. Opened the vault. The amazing thing, though, was once the vault came open, I'm trained, as a lot of people in our industry are. I don't look inside a safe or inside a vault. My wife told me decades ago, look, if you don't look, you're never going to be called in court to testify to what you saw. So Mr. Corey had said the same thing decades ago. If you don't look, you can't see. So it took me a while to force my gaze through the opening. When I did, I was stunned. I've been in hundreds or thousands of bank vaults rooms, and this was enormous. Probably, I don't know, 20 by 40. That's a huge vault room. Yeah. But there was less elbow room in that vault than any vault I've ever been in, and it's because inside the vault were all these industrial shelving units just stacked one after the other, probably, I don't know, 50 or 60 of them in there. You know, Prince wasn't a real big guy, so he would have had no problem going down the aisles. But, you know, a big dude, yeah, you probably rub shoulders with those shelving units. The upshot here was that, yeah, was there unrecorded music in that vault? Yes. Thousands of tapes just waiting to be worked on. So the archivist, James, was super thrilled, and he took possession of the tapes, and they ended up going to California. They're no longer at Paisley Park. The door itself was a Mosler American Century. You may have a photo of it. It's the only American Century that I've ever drilled that had the equivalent of Relsum in it, which was Mosler's baddest ass hard plate, actually made by the Schwader Company for Mosler. Sure enough, of all the Mosler American Centuries that I've drilled, of course that one had to have the hard plate from hell. Yeah, that's the vault right there. And the tape that you see running across the door, the red and the blue and white, that's evidence tape, so that they could satisfy themselves that no one was sneaking in to get the door open. In
Yeah.
fact, that evidence tape kind of screwed me up. When I got the locks unlocked and turned the handle, the door wouldn't pull open. And it took me a second to realize why.
Uh-oh. Whoops.
Well,
That's
a person with normal hearing would have caught it, would have heard the ripping of the tape.
yeah.
I didn't until it got louder when I pulled harder. And then I heard the ripping sound. And I looked over and remembered, duh, it's the evidence tape.
Yeah.
So
And
we pulled hard and it came
so
off.
that's it right there. And then there's the purple paint. Look at that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Somebody asked, was there a glass relocking device on this?
No.
No. Okay. Gotcha.
No, but there was. I was thinking about this vault door and how to write a book for the general public. You mentioned a minute ago how we have to be careful not to divulge insider secrets to the general public. I had to be very careful in this book because the last thing I wanted to do was give some safe or vault opening secret away to the general public. So I was very careful. I went through the book many times to make sure there were no drill points in it or no other sensitive information. I forgot where we were going to go with that.
Oh, we were talking about the documentation and being careful what you put out to the public, in this door specifically. So how would you cover this door if you wanted to present that in your book?
Well, probably just the way I did. Nothing very technical, although I did come up with a name. One of the things that I tried to do was come up with kind of catchy terms that the general public could latch onto. And one of them was, I called the relockers in this door. I used a singular term and I called it a mousetrap relocker. In actuality, these doors have two of them, but it sounded more sexy to keep it singular and just call it the mousetrap relocker. People could kind of visualize that it works sort of like a mousetrap. When it fires, it swings around and blocks the boltwork from moving, even if you have the combination.
Yeah. Are there any other, we just got one question that popped up here. Are there any other scheduled pen parties that you're doing this year, or is Texas it for 2023?
Texas is it for 2023. Since I have taken over NSO, it demands a lot of my time. And every time I go out on a job or go to a class, I'm in a minor panic because I'll check my phone and then there are a bunch of questions that need to be answered. So the truth is my retirement is NSO. So I'm trying to be very mindful to do my job there and not let it lapse. Right. So when I go out and do a job or go out and do a class, it's a little nerve-wracking because I don't want to let my membership down.
Well, I can tell anybody that's ever met you, or people, if they're thinking, if somebody posts something on there and you don't get to it right away, I mean, you are usually just like a hawk, just answer, and you have it in minutes usually, which is highly unusual for most places. Usually it's 24, 48 hours. And out of all of the people that I've met in this industry, you are by far the most warm, welcoming, and kindest. I actually, like, when you first jump in here, you get a lot of pushback from a lot of the old brass. And me being a young buck and my gosh, putting things on YouTube, for crying out loud, I got put through the ringer pretty bad, quite a bit. My name got passed around there a lot, and it was not in a good way when things first started.
Can I ask, were you divulging things that in retrospect you shouldn't have, or not?
No, not at that particular point in time. I don't think we had anything like an actual safe open. It was how to change a mechanical lock to a digital lock. And somehow, somebody watched a video and some guy didn't get a job because of it, because of the DIY thing. And then they were all fluffed up at me. And I mean, there's a bazillion videos on that right now.
Sure.
And that's kind of where it's a good thing too. Like you said, we learn from that. And that's where I draw my line. I don't have any safe cracking or safe opening videos. I don't have any lock picking videos. I have how-tos, I have installation videos, and I have process type videos, more mechanically based. But that's why I have my private page to host all of my menagerie of videos and things too. I basically overwhelmed every other organization, and they said, we can't handle all of the videos you have. You have like 5,000 videos. We can't even deal with it. So I had to come up with my own thing, and so I did.
Is that for real? You have 5,000 videos?
I probably got more than that. I'm probably up to about 8 now.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. Not all completed. I'm like you. I've probably got maybe 20% of what I've actually done, edited, released, and usable. A lot of it is
Yeah,
still raw content.
sure.
But yeah, but then I met you, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this guy is nice. Like I can ask him anything, and he'll answer my question without giving me a hard time or complaining about something that I've done. And
Well, if I can just interrupt you, what you're going to find, Wayne, is how to say this right. All of the top guys, I'm not saying I'm a top guy, but all of the top guys are like that. They're all super nice. Phil Scherer is one of the nicest guys you're ever going to meet, and he is the key lock stud on planet Earth.
yeah,
Lance Mayhew, another nice. You can't find nicer guys than the guys who are at the top of these specialty mountains. They are just superb people. It's not till you come down to the mid-level techs where you get the biting comments, the snark. And by the
well,
way, it usually goes away. It's not that I was never snarky. I was. But something happens when you get beyond a certain ability level. All of a sudden, the things that threatened you earlier in your life no longer do, or they don't bother you, and you just become a nicer person.
Well, and that's that ego threat thing. It's like if
Yeah,
you're in a room, the loudest barker in the room is usually the least to bite. It's the guy that's real quiet and kind of watching and seeing what everybody's doing. That's the one you want to watch out for. So, and these are all things that I had to learn. Yeah, the one who's being the most disrespectful in this room is probably the least educated as well, and just ignore that person and move on. And then but it's almost like if you think of it as a video game, I had to go through a lot of levels to meet the bosses, to
right.
meet the top level guys up top. So I
Yeah,
just thought everybody was a jerk. I mean, I thought everybody was really, really very, very rude, salty, and difficult to get along with. And then once we really started diving into it, here's the real class of people. Here's the
yeah,
real gems in the industry. And then everything changed. And of course, then I had to cut my teeth too. And I had to prove that I actually needed to be there. And that was one of the things that I enjoyed doing.
sure.
One of my personal little stories was the very first SAFTA pen party I went to. I was counted out, and people did not like the fact that I was there. And even some of the instructors did not like the fact that I was there. And I went there. And the first day, you just kind of sit in the classroom a little bit and you learn about things. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I've got a little bit of this. And then you go out to the shop and then you pick a lady to dance with. And you pick a safe that you want to engage with. So I've crewed up with a couple people and we picked one and it had an ESL 10 on it. And I'm like, all right, I got you. So I got the factory code from the factory. I know it's cheating a little bit, but I wanted to be a little flashy. And it didn't open. And I knew it didn't open and the door had no play in it. So I'm like, all right, cool. I'll go get a ratchet strap and a block from the hardware store. 4:30 in the morning, get my ratchet strap, my block, all this stuff. And I was kind of written off by a lot of the people there. And before the instructor actually had the instructions given out for that morning, I had the door swung and tapped on his shoulder. Ever since then,
Nice.
nobody's given me any crap. So that was
Well, it's a bummer that you never got to meet Skip, because he really was just the nicest guy in the industry, and he affected everyone who met him that way. You couldn't be a jerk and be around Skip.
right.
He would probably call you out. He just brought out the best in people,
It puts you back in your place.
but nicely. Yeah, you would
But nicely.
you would really have liked Skip.
Oh yeah, definitely. Jake, I can't ever pronounce his last name, but there was another guy, Jake, that passed away right around that 10-year mark too.
Oh,
And
Jacobuski?
yes, yep,
Yeah.
yep. He's actually the one that started the social media Facebook groups, the very
Oh,
first
I
one.
didn't know that.
Yeah, he was one of the original founders. So, all right. One of the last questions here. Tell us something about Dave that nobody else knows. What's unique?
Well,
You're a pretty open guy, so that's a hard question.
yeah, there's not a lot that people don't know. Well, one thing would be in sports, I was your traditional guy, football, basketball, baseball.
Mm-hmm.
But recently, I've come to take into loving tennis, and it's because of this 20-year-old sensation out of Spain. His name's Carlos Alcaraz, and he is an absolute magician with a tennis racket, and he's just a kid. He's 20 years old, and he makes watching tennis an absolute blast because he does the impossible almost every match. It's the craziest thing. Look, the greatest players that ever lived, Nadal, Federer, Djokovic, they have great highlight reels. But Alcaraz has a great highlight reel virtually from every match that he plays because he does so many impossible shots. So that'd be one thing, kind of weird, but I like tennis.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Watched it today, as a matter of fact.
Ah, very cool. Yeah. The women's tennis tends to get brutally competitive. I mean, the Venus and Serena Williams, some of those matches are some of the best in history. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah, Coco Gauff and Iga Swiatek just had a barn burner of a match. Iga won. They're in Shanghai.
Yeah.
For a big tournament over there.
Do you have anything you still want to do in the industry that you haven't done yet?
Well, I've always been curious about the vault at Fort Knox.
Mm.
And, I'd love, if any of your viewers have ever worked on that vault, I'd love to hear about it. I've heard that it's a Mosler. I've never seen it or never seen pictures of it either. Other than that, Dave Mercer told me once about a gigantic Diebold wedge lock door that's in Chicago. Mm-hmm. I'd love to see that. And there, by the way, Ken Fu, talk about specialties. Ken Fu's most specialty is that he is probably the reigning world expert on the wedge lock. He's extremely knowledgeable on those doors.
And electronic e-lock conversion too. Him and Adam.
Yeah.
Very, very talented people.
Yes.
Sure. All righty. Well, we have ran through the gauntlet of questions here. I'm going to pull the photos back up, and we'll go through that. We'll go through the rest of those photos, and if you want to just tell us a little bit about them, let me know, and we'll stop and pause for a second here.
Sure.
Let's see. What do we got next? Okay, so that's one. What is this one here? That's your homepage picture.
Right. It looks like it's not in very good focus either. Dang.
No, we got it. Yeah.
That's a vault at a key bank. You can tell by the carpet.
Uh-huh.
It's in downtown Portland in one of the high rises.
Okay.
I didn't actually open that one. I opened the Guardian 2 that's around the corner from this one. I had that one taken by my Diebold buddy just because I like that door.
Ah, yeah. And people don't really realize how mechanically genius these old devices are. I mean, how many moving parts are on this vault right here if you just had to pick a really big round number?
Not a clue. Dave Mercer would probably know, have a lot better idea than I do. But there's no comparison. I mean, nobody makes a vault like that today. I mean, there is a company that does make a round door vault, but it can't compare to this one.
No. And these are just engineering feats. I mean, really. And a lot of, you were talking about the antique safes, and Skip maybe making fun of those a little bit, but still, I love them. I love antique safes.
I do too.
They didn't have machining capabilities back then, and they still were able to make these complex locking systems that just, I mean, they're crazy. All right, go ahead and explain this photo a little bit.
Yeah, that caught my eye. When I was in Prince's vault, I glanced down, I saw a computer, and I thought, what the heck? Why would Prince put a computer in his vault? I mean, who's ever heard of that? A computer inside a vault?
Uh-huh.
Well, that explains it. I mean, he's got all those thousands and thousands of tapes on all those bookshelves. And if you want to find a particular one, that is how you do it. Those are the instructions on how to find anything in particular. Prince really did make his own version of the Dewey Decimal System, which all of our American libraries use.
Wow.
It's fantastic.
Just for his own content. That is crazy.
Yeah, every single tape was in a box on shelves, and all of the boxes had letters and numbers on them, which corresponded to whatever he put in his computer. And so if you were looking for a particular tape, say Prince wanted to find his appearance on, I don't know, David Letterman from 19 whatever, he would just plug that in and get spit back out the number that's on the tape box, and they were alphabetical or numerical in his vault. It was genius, really. I was really impressed.
That's amazing. That is awesome. What are we looking at here?
That is the fence surrounding Paisley Park shortly after Prince died.
Okay. So
You
all
can
the
hardly
balloon,
see that. That
purple.
is a chain link fence, a 6-foot chain link fence that you can hardly see because of all the tributes that fans left for him.
Wow. Wow, that truly must have been really, really special. There was a little bit more to that story, wasn't there? Didn't a news company like release that it was opened
Oh
and
yeah,
it wasn't?
right. Yeah, ABC ran a story that Prince's vault had been opened shortly after he died,
Hmm.
and I was like, "Well, who did it? I didn't hear anything about it." There aren't very many guys in the country who specialize in opening bank vaults. Did Ron Jewell do it? Did Dave Mercer do it? Who did it? Who opened that vault? Turns out they made it up.
They didn't even do it.
And when I tried to track down the source, it was very frustrating because ABC National credited their local Minneapolis affiliate for having broken the story. So when you go to the local affiliate, it says unnamed source. So from that day forward, I've just become very skeptical whenever I read a news report that says unnamed source, because it was
Mhm.
BS in this case. There was no unnamed source that told them that the vault had been drilled open. It
They just
hadn't
wanted
been
a
drilled
headline.
open.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
just wanted a headline. They got what they wanted, and nobody was going to press anything. You know what I mean? Nobody was going to investigate it to
Yeah.
the point where nobody cares. What's going on with this photo here? You've got a candlelight, a gun, and somebody drawing a picture or writing something.
That is a photo that I borrowed with permission, by the way, from the book Lure of the Lock.
Hmm.
And I wanted that to illustrate why time locks came into existence. So we're imagining here that that is either the bank president or one of the tellers or clerks, as they called them back then,
Hmm.
being tortured in his home to give out the combination to the vault. There was a real case where this happened. And when it did happen, the banking industry freaked out and turned immediately to the lock makers for a solution. And the solution was a time lock,
Hmm.
because then no one can open the vault in the middle of the night. So these attacks on individuals in their homes to get the combos, they stopped once the bad guys figured out, oh, it won't do any good because we
Right.
can't open the vault even with the combo.
Right. So it was an answer to, it's basically, and for people that don't understand what a time lock does, it's basically like putting a watch inside or a timer inside the safe, and you would wind it up for whatever particular amount of time.
Right.
Be it because you'd have to either do overnight and then you have to do the weekend. You'd have to add more time to it for that. So the back in the Wild West, or at any point in time at that point in time, the bank manager was, you had a target on your head. It was only a matter of time before the robbers came and, threatened you or beat you up or did whatever they did and got the money. They had to come up with a solution.
Yeah. And it's worked well. I mean, we're all accustomed to that now. Everybody knows that the bank can't open its vault in the middle of the night.
To this day, it still works. And then it even worked into to some of the other locks or some of the other safes where they actually didn't just put them in bank vaults. They put them on the safes as well. They put mechanical ones on there at
Right.
certain points in time. And then now you have what's called time delay, meaning you put in the combination and then electronically it counts down 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever you set it for, or whatever that particular lock manufacturer is set for. And that basically just stops the smash and grab and buys time. So that's what's going on here. Is this guy's writing down the code because they got a rope around his neck and a gun to his head so that
Yep.
he will give them the code or the combination to the bank and probably make him dial it in because they probably couldn't even do that at that point in time. All righty. So what do we got here?
That is the comedic genius of my old friend Don Spinard. Back when Mike Madden figured out how to beat the XO7 with a little can of glue, I was talking with Don about it because I was about to break the article to the industry, showing the technique and what have you. And Don said, wait. Don't release the article yet. I've got a great idea. You're going to love it, but I'm not going to tell you anything about it. So I'm like, all right. So Don had gotten one of these T-shirts at, I think, an Aloha show or one of the conventions. And he took it and he crossed out the word choose, as you can see in the photo, and wrote in glue. And he sent it to Mike Madden. And then Mike Madden had his wife take a photo and he sent it to me. And we put it in the original article on how to defeat the XO7.
Oh,
And
gee.
I just loved it. Now, the manufacturer of the X07 didn't find it funny at all.
I bet
They were beyond pissed.
not. Yeah.
And I would urge people to read, is it chapter 17? I think it's chapter 17 in the book.
Yeah, I think it
It's
is.
the X07 debacle.
Yeah. And that's
We can,
that's in Safecracker, correct?
yes, Safecracker, chapter 17
Okay.
is the Mike Madden story. It's crazy what went down.
Oh my goodness. And
That's Robert Wagner and Fred Astaire.
okay.
Alexander Mundy on the right and Alistair Mundy on the left. Father-son fictional safecrackers.
Ah.
Robert Wagner, the good-looking guy on the right, he was my original inspiration.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
I was inspired by a crook.
Oh my goodness.
But he was a super cool crook. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And then we've got we briefly touched on this one here.
Yep.
It looks like everybody always had fun. It looks like there's a common theme that everybody really, you can't take this job too seriously, and you have to be able to have some humor. You have to be able to laugh at somebody else and yourself as well. And you can really make this fun if you really want to.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're all glad that Skip didn't pull the trigger because he wouldn't have hit the glass or whatever that is on Phil's head.
Uh-oh, was he not known to be a good shot?
Apparently not.
Uh-oh. All right. And then we've got this picture here. What is this one of?
Oh, that one. Where did you get that? That was used. Some newspapers contacted me. They were running articles on Safecracker, and they wanted a photo of me in action. So I sent them that one. That was a Lefebvre that I drilled in Chicago. And my old friend, who's no longer with Diebold, Ken Nowakowski, took the photo.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. No, you look good. You got the vest on and everything.
One thing I don't like is that fella is not drilling straight. He's angling down just a hair.
You see the chain line? You see the chain?
Yep.
Oh, boy.
Now, I'm sure my protocol on any job like that is to have whoever's with me spotting me. So I have no doubt that immediately upon taking the photo, Ken said, "Bring her down, Dave." My protocol is this: when I'm working with somebody, they're standing off to the side, and if they do this, I know to bring my back of my motor up, and if they do that, I know to bring the back of my motor down. I don't drill a vault with a lever rig unless I have somebody spotting me, because I do not have Don Spinard or Skip Eckert's ability to drill through a 1.5 or 2 foot thick vault by hand with not having nobody spot me. Both of those guys, well, Skip's passed now, but he could do that. He could drill straight as an arrow. Didn't matter how deep the hole needed to be. I watched Don do it personally. He was working with Diebold, and he and I attacked a rotary wedge lock, a Diebold rotary wedge lock, one of their thicker of the modern, in fact, their thickest of all their modern vault doors. And Don drilled. I never had to say one word. I was spotting him. I never had to say a word. He kept it perfectly straight, and it was 13 inches to our target. Jeez. I was amazed. I can't do that.
For people that don't understand, like you've probably drilled through, a 1/4-inch piece of steel or a 1/2-inch piece of steel, or maybe a 1-inch piece of steel, maybe a C-rate safe or something like that, or even a TL-rated safe where you're 3 or 4 inches. If you're 1 degree off here, by the time you go 4 to 6 inches out, you're in no man's land. You're gone.
Right.
You're gone. You are out of nowhere. Now you compound that times 13 inches or 14 inches or however far it is. That is, it's such a difficult task to get that hole to show up exactly where you want it to be. Not to mention, you have to make sure you did the math correctly to make sure you're even in the right spot to begin with. So
that's exactly right. You'll notice a lot of guys express concern that their mini rig angle drilled on them. If you let your motor just hang on the back of a mini rig and don't hold it kind of centered, your hole will slightly angle up. Now, it's no big deal if it's a B rate or a C rate or even most TL15s or TL30s where you're within a couple of inches of the lock. But it can be a very big deal, as you said, if your target is far, far away.
Right. What do we got going on here? This is a wild one.
Where the heck did you get that?
Just Google. These are your 2 top Google images. If you Google yourself, this is what comes up.
That was a porta vault that Mike Carruthers and I drilled in, I can't remember the name of the town, somewhere in Wyoming, I think, Wyoming. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that probably got taken off Strong Arm's website, we might guess.
Okay. Yeah, probably. Fun stuff. All right. I'm going to go through some of the questions over here. If you have any final thoughts or any other information, anybody else you want to mention in the industry or anything else, just go ahead and let us know now. And I'm going to mow through these questions as you do that.
Yeah, go right ahead. Well, I just soon answer questions. I can't think of anything I need to say off the top of my head. Say it again.
Yeah, we've covered a lot, and I apologize. It's almost a 2-hour interview, and we'll wrap it up here in the next couple minutes. But okay. I wanted to maximize this opportunity. I don't think anybody has ever really gone this in depth, technically, with you so far. Let's see here. Observe. How exciting! Okay, lots of comments, but not a lot of questions. SAFTA members. SAFTA is Safe and Vault Technicians Association. Really, as mentioned before, that's a great way to get started in everything.
Yes.
27 years, 5 employees. Any thoughts on the market? Where do you think that the Safe and Vault industry is going, Dave?
Oh, geez. Well,
the next 5 years.
I am not a good prognosticator. One of the things that we have learned in the social sciences is that people inside a given industry are no better at predicting that industry's trajectory than the people outside that industry are. My track record, embarrassingly, is not good. I was the guy who said in 1991 or 2 that, these newfangled electronic locks, just a fad, they'll fade away. What did I know?
And everybody thought, hey, this is the end of combination changes, right? They thought this was the industry, cutting out the safe technician. Little did they know what happens to electronics. How many electronics? That's a great question. How many electronic locks do you have to open that have failed versus mechanical ones recently in the last maybe 5 years?
It's no contest.
Yeah. Very, very. I've got 5-gallon buckets of electronic locks. Oh, that's a great question too. What is your particular take on the Liberty safe debacle with the FBI raiding them and backdoor codes and all of this fun stuff?
Well, I'm of two minds there. I have never liked the idea that a safe manufacturer is keeping combos long after a safe has been delivered and installed and is up and running. My wife, the attorney, is absolutely flabbergasted that there haven't been massive lawsuits already. And here's why. It's a sensitive topic and people probably won't like me saying this part out loud. But look, we know that there have been locksmiths and safe techs that have gone bad. I don't need to name names, but we know these people have done that. Yeah. They're in prison now, or some of them used to be in or out now. There's no reason in the world to think that there are bad apples among safe techs, but no bad apples among the office workers at safe companies. That's just positively stupid. Of course there are. Right. And we know that years ago, the safeguards were almost non-existent at some of those companies, and those records, no doubt, were absconded with by some people. We will never know, Wayne, how many times a former employee at a major safe company used a factory combo to commit a burglary and didn't get caught. We'll never know that. I absolutely detest the whole MRC project entirely. That there are people out there today who have purchased safes with electronic locks on them. They don't know that there is an MRC. No matter how many times that person changes their user code, that MRC is still there like a Manchurian candidate awaiting activation. If I were a client of a large safe company and I found that out, that they had a back door into my safe and no one ever told me, I would be beyond pissed. It's one of the stupidest things that I've ever heard of, and yet everybody accepts it as just the way things are. It doesn't have to be the way things are. If I were an end user, I would get the MRC removed or I'd have the lock replaced.
Absolutely.
In terms of the Liberty thing, I don't like that Liberty or any other manufacturer keeps those codes. I hate that. It should never happen. But
Yeah.
look, if they do, I mean, if law enforcement has a warrant, that safe or vault or file cabinet, whatever it is, it's coming open.
Yeah.
Come hell or high water, it will be opened. Now, I tend to be libertarian, which means I don't like government coming in and bothering people over things like drugs or prostitution or any of the vices. It bugs the hell out of me. But somebody's going to open the safe. It might as well be me. I'm just doing my job. So I don't have a problem with Liberty or any other manufacturer giving a code to the FBI or a combo to the FBI, but I do wish they didn't keep them in the first place. Once that safe is delivered and installed and the customer is using it, those codes and combos should go away. One
Yeah.
day, by the way, they will. The public, the only reason, in my judgment, that it hasn't happened already is that the general public never knew any of this.
Well,
Now
that's
some of them do, and we're going to see things change a little bit. I hope these big companies, this, what's the non-swear word to say, I hope they deep six the idea of keeping MRCs for years after a safe has been installed and delivered. That's my take on it.
Right. And Liberty kind of took the fall here for the whole entire industry. I know you're not on social media. This was huge. Did you hear how big of a debacle the Bud Light debacle was?
Oh, sure.
Okay. This was the equivalent of that in our own very industry. And really, Liberty was just doing what every other single safe manufacturer on the planet's doing. They just got caught, and they're the ones that, then there's some politics and whatnot behind it that fueled it as well. But they did actually release a statement that says you can now call and you can actually get your MRC code removed from the files on there. And then I made a little video. I was like, hey, if you just simply change the lock off and then make sure that there's no exposed serial number on the outside, then you should alleviate most of those problems. Or take your electronic off and put a mechanical on. Or if you have a mechanical, just change the combination. There is no override code for a mechanical lock.
Right.
Do you agree with all of that, or do you have any other suggestions?
100%.
All right, great. Dave, do you have a class on bank vault time locks?
No, and the truth is, I don't know enough about time locks to teach competently. I know just enough to do my job, but I have friends that are time lock wizards. So I would have one of them teach that class.
Yeah, and SAFTA has some great classes. There's a lot of different organizations that have great time lock class, and that's all it's focused on. And there's people that just do that. I'm kind of with you. I don't like to. I really don't want to play with that at this point in time. I understand how they work. I understand the purpose. I understand how to defeat them, and that's good enough for me.
I'd recommend Ken Fu.
Yeah, Ken Fu.
Very knowledgeable guy, super nice guy. Yeah.
Great. Well, I think we have answered just about everything. I mean, we have really dove in here, and I thank you so much for being such a gracious and honest upfront guest. If I have one final question for you to pander towards your hobby or your the things you enjoy, what is the legacy that Dave McOmie leaves behind? What do you want people to remember you by, if you could have a paragraph or so?
Well, I think most of us would like to be thought of by our fellows as a nice person or a good person, much more than, being good at our job, no matter what the job is, whether it's playing pro sports or being a safecracker or being a plumber or what have you. The job is just secondary. How you treat other people is just way more important. Well, that's what I would like. He was a nice guy. That's about all any of us can ask for.
Well, I could definitely attest to that, and I can tell everybody that you're one of the most honest, upfront, humble human beings I have ever met. In fact, one of the first things that I ever actually heard about you with one of your penetration parties or pen parties was Dave McOmie said, "There's not a safe or vault or container on this planet that I can't open. However, I fear every day that I will lock my keys in my car and not know how to get them out."
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, with that, Dave, thank
Well,
you so
I
much.
have to say that
Go ahead.
twice in my career, I have had to call locksmith friends to let me into my van when I've locked the keys in it. One time with the engine running in my own driveway, for Pete's sake.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Yeah.
A funny story too. My neighbor came over. He was the principal of the middle school that was just a few blocks from our house at the time. Uh, I had just gotten home from a bank vault job in Chicago. As a matter of fact, I'm in the driveway. Joe saw me. He walks over and say, "Hey, how'd it go?" And for some dumbass reason, I shut and locked my driver's door, and I had flip the little switch, and it was locked, and my engine was running. So I said to Joe, "Joe, oh crap, I need to call one of my buddies." And he's like, "One of your buddies? What?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't have a spare key." How dumb is that, not to have a spare key? I don't have a spare key, and I just locked the keys in the van. And he scratched his head, and he's like, "This doesn't make any sense, Dave. Like, you can open a bank vault, but you can't open your van?" This, yeah, he was super shocked, but
Oh
it was
my.
totally true. And
I've done it too. I've locked mine in there, but luckily I had another van that
yeah,
I was able to come get.
but I'll bet you opened the one you locked too,
I
didn't you?
did. I did. I most certainly did. I most certainly did. Well, thank
Otherwise, you'd have that catch-22 where to get the tool you need to open your van, you got to get your van open.
Exactly. Well, that's why I like service trucks, because all my tools are out on the side in the body. They're not in the vehicle, so it
Yeah.
works out great. I've also
Ah,
learned to take advantage. I always carry two sets of keys. I carry one clipped on, and then one that I actually use and take in and out of the vehicle. So I always have a spare key. That's my little
nice.
trick for the trade,
Good thinking.
especially with all the how expensive car keys are. My goodness, for what one fob is as much as some safes.
Yeah, true.
So, my goodness. Well, thank you so much again for gracing us with your presence. It's been truly an honor to interview you through this process, and thank you for everything that you've done for the industry. You're certainly a hero to myself and many other people who are watching here. So I hope that everybody got a lot of more information and can understand you a little bit more. And if you're a professional, definitely check out NSO. It is the best form on the internet whatsoever. So thank you so
Well,
much, and we appreciate it.
that's kind of you to say, Wayne. Thanks for having me on, and continue doing what you're doing. We need you. We need somebody doing this kind of thing, and I'm happy it's you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm going to
You're
end the
welcome.
live stream here, and then we can chat for a minute afterwards if you like.
Sounds
See
good.
you later, everybody. Have a good one.